Hey there, hunters. Welcome back to another video in my Let's Talk About series where I discuss and sort of review games. Today we're going to talk about Wild Hearts, the Monster Hunter style game that's been getting a lot of attention lately. Rather than give a full review of the game though, I do want to just talk about its features, mechanics, and some systems, and some of its shortcomings. I've dumped about 30 hours into this game as I'm writing this, and with no doubt it's going to be hitting 40s and such as the video comes out. Now, I'm not done with the game yet, so there's kind of a lot to the game. Like, it just scales and keeps going. And since I'm going to be playing before a day 1 patch, it's not really fair of me to give a review as of now. I'd rather just kind of explain the game and show you it, and then just let you decide if it's worth your time and money. So with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and dive into this. So, Wild Hearts. Of course, there are a bajillion similarities between this and Monster Hunter, and the big question on everyone's mind, and one I get asked every 15 minutes is this better than Monster Hunter? Is it the Monster Hunter killer? No, come on dudes, Monster Hunter is a 20-year-old franchise. It's not going to be replaced by this new IP overnight. So if that's all you're wondering, great, that's it, it's not. Wild Hearts though is very much like Monster Hunter, but it has its own ideas and combat flow to make it feel very different to Monster Hunter, while still kind of feeling familiar. And no, it's not strictly better than Monster Hunter, it's not strictly worse, it's just got its own thing going. So let me explain what's going on with Wild Hearts. The big topic for Wild Hearts is the Fortnite-esque crafting system that raised a lot of red flags for Monster Hunter players for sure, and I totally understand why. Going into Wild Hearts, I was pretty adamant that I wouldn't be using the crafting unless I absolutely had to. I'd just stick to my bow and cannon. But as you play more and get more comfortable with your crafting, it becomes a great extension to the player's toolkit, and I actually quite love it. I do think the game actually started out as like some Fortnite clone or Battle Royale Monster Hunter game, because there's no reason why we should be breaking down rocks and trees to get some threads for like our crafting engine. Makes no sense. So I think there's like some ideas left in there during the development, but that's neither here nor there. It's not really a big part of the game anyway. The Karakuri crafting is more than the trailers make it out to be though. Not only are you crafting like your bombs and traps and some other equipment like ballistas for a fight, you can also craft all sorts of things, such as springs, zip lines, pet cages, camps that you can actually fast travel to, shortcuts across the map, farming equipment, pretty much anything you can actually think of. And it's all actually permanent. Between hunts, exits, close the game, whatever, you make it, it stays forever. So everyone's going to be having different means of transportation as they get through their maps and kind of bend the map to their will. And it's actually quite amazing and something that I actually like more and more as I play it. Now in combat, the Karakuri crafting stuff is cool because it kind of plays into your weapon's moveset, but you're not really reliant on it at all. There are some hiccups right now though, like some of the crafting spaces require you to like stack buildables, which, you know, to make something else bigger, it's like a little like combo thing. Like you put a spring and then a skewer and then a spring on top and then it makes like a ballista. Well, stacking this stuff is actually really finicky on like where it wants to go, and if you're moving at all or it's just kind of like move your camera or mouse at all, it becomes impossible to try to piece together your crafts. So you kind of like waste your time with your limited resources, you're in the middle of combat, you're probably going to get hit, and basically you just have to stand still to make anything complicated just to ensure it actually works, and even then it's kind of iffy. It's kind of a turnoff, but it's really not a big deal breaker in my eye right now. It's just something you got to get used to, and of course they could improve it, you know, in some patch or later on, but even if it's not, it's just a minor complaint. And there are a ton of Karakuri upgrades in this little tree that let you pick and choose what type of crafts you want to specialize in, but you can ultimately just unlock them all in the end. It's a neat little touch and gives you something to work towards. So ultimately, I kind of like the Karakuri crafting stuff. It did look very much like Fortnite-y stuff, but I was, you know, going to give it a chance, and it turned out to be pretty cool, so I'm happy with that. Next, I want to talk about the weapons and armor in Wild Hearts. So of the 8 weapons, I've only played 2. Shocker, it's the bow and the cannon. And while I do like both weapons, I find that their movesets are kind of lacking, and they just need some more inputs, which is something I didn't actually think I would complain about. For the most part, there's no defensive options in the game besides just dodge, and I admit the iframes are great, but the weapons themselves are suffering kind of because of this. All weapons appear to have the exact same relatively simple playbook, like you just do your one thing. For bow, basically its attacks are like little explosive arrowheads, and then you blow them up with a bigger arrow, and that's basically the entire weapon. While it has a bunch of different attacks that shoot arrows in different ways, ultimately those are the only things it does. You put a little arrow in, and then you blow it up with a big arrow. And so there's no parry, there's no melee options, there's no different arrow types, no buffs, nothing like that in the toolkit. So while it kind of looks flashy and it's fun, it's rather repetitive. The cannon, which is the other weapon I played, while being a much more complex weapon, and I did find it fun, ultimately left a lot to be desired. Like, hand cannon has a weird rotation. You have to shoot to build up heat, to fire a mortar when your heat is red, but not overheating, hit the monster with the mortar, have it bounce off, go to where the mortar landed, suck up the energy into your gun, and then you can use that to turn into a big laser. And the cannon itself does very little damage without the laser, so the entire plan is to get the laser as much as possible. So you're just like fiddling with this contraption to try to get your actual damage out. And there's issues with that though. Not only does it have incredibly slow walk speeds and bad reload speeds because it's a heavy bowgun essentially, but the game is insanely fast, especially when you get into high rank and later, and monsters move far too much for that weapon. It also has a very short critical distance. It just does 1 damage most of the time, which is fine because it's just building up heat anyway. And its mortars can't go very far either, so you're often having to like reposition to get a better shot with your mortars, but then you end up losing your heat gauge because you're spending time doing that. And you can also get knocked around from little monsters, ally players, a stiff breeze, or anything else to just break you out of your animation or your laser. And ultimately, there's nothing else in your playbook besides shoot for little damage and then build up your laser. So the entire time, it's just this big struggle to get anything done, and it's really just not great. The damage isn't there, and while I still kind of find it fun to use, it's just far too much work for the output, so kind of sad and disappointed with the weapon overall. Other weapons seem to follow a similar style of just do this one thing over and over, but I haven't really played those. Now, on the bright side, weapons and armors are pretty interesting in Wild Hearts. The weapon tree is very unique because like basically as you go down this tree, you can pick up inherited skills for each of the weapons, and you can stack up to 5 of these as you progress down your tree, customizing your weapon. And you can also go back up and around in pretty much any direction on this tree, as long as you just keep going and don't back up into yourself. You can also very cheaply refund your upgrades and try different branches basically risk-free. There's a ton of different skills you can inherit on your weapons, from your generic, crit and attack stuff to like peak performance, and then other things like applying poison, burn, freeze, and entangle, or increasing parameters of your moveset, like strengthening certain attacks and providing buffs when doing certain actions. Like, it's actually very advanced, and making weapons is gonna be kind of crazy in the end game, and I kind of like it. Armors are also kind of unique, in that while they're simple and they don't have this tree, armors can be augmented for either a humanoid or a kimono influence, which will unlock skills as you have certain thresholds of influence. All the armors actually show their skills, you're just grayed out, and they kind of show you what symbol you need, and then you have to kind of match up how much of like a demon or how much of a humanoid are you with like your little armor skills, and that unlocks your stuff. So it is kind of interesting. You can also equip talismans up to 5 or a certain point threshold based on the rarity and skills that it provides, but they do give you additional buffs and effects. So I mean, altogether there's kind of a lot going on into your character build. And while low rank obviously has very limited amount of skills and like equipment and such, it gets fairly crazy later on, so I've been kind of happy with it. Now, speaking of getting crazy, yeah, the game gets crazy. The low rank part of the game, which is like the first 2 chapters, are fairly calm and cool, but once you hit high rank and get into like chapters 4 and beyond, like it just gets all kinds of crazy. The game picks up so much speed, and it's just kind of hard to comprehend at times. Like, I can't really say I dislike it, but I know it's going to be another hot topic. Monsters just move so damn much. They spam AoE abilities, and you really just have to dodge them all or die because you don't have anything else. You can get hit on the ground too and just get comboed very easily, so monsters are a huge threat all the time. It's never safe. You can't Superman dive, you can't sit on the ground, you can't hide behind a shield, nada. And honestly, I really like the fights a lot once you get into the high rank stuff. Like, there's some jank here and there, of course, but I definitely had more good experiences than bad ones. And also, if you're wondering if this has like a G-rank equivalent kind of thing, kinda sorta, I like to call it more like their version of like Hypers and Tempers and Apex monsters. It's not really G-rank, but monsters do continue to evolve and scale and get crazier and crazier. So by now though, you can probably guess that I do like Wild Hearts, and yeah, I do. But obviously, nothing gets a free pass, and Wild Hearts definitely has its fair share of downsides, besides the weapons. And I'd like to quickly just go over those issues I had while playing. First, stuttering and general performance was fairly bad on the PC. I'm running an RTX 3070 Ti and I could barely hold 60 frames, at least originally. A few days later there was a 0.02 patch during the trial period that did make things feel a lot better, I don't know how that's going to translate to the actual release though. Outside of the general stuttering, Wild Hearts has a lot of issues with lighting, pop-ins, and textures. It just kind of really bogs down the entire experience just because nothing really looks right. Sun shines through cavern walls, snow and rain look just fake and just blur your vision. Textures don't really load and look like PlayStation 2 graphics sometimes. It's all just very messy visually. This is something I hope gets fixed in a day one patch or soon, because this is what everyone's gonna see. And I can let the bugs go, bugs are bound to happen, that's fine, but nothing should be performing like this, especially when it has a $70 price tag attached. I feel like things should work on PC perfectly, but PC ports in general have been pretty bad these days. Online too, it's kind of janky. Monsters and general player syncing is like way off sometimes, and while that could just be a peer-to-peer connection issue, it did make playing online pretty unbearable at times. Monsters were just teleporting all around and one-tapping you, and it's just not all that fun. So again, your experience may vary, but I'm a little concerned with the online play, and I mean, that's pretty standard for Monster Hunter's games at this point, right? And then my last real complaint is actually about the monsters themselves. Monsters all sound like very generic stock sounds like of dolphins and donkeys and other things, and it's really weird to hear. I don't get what that is about, but I really hope monsters get some actual sound effects. It also seems that monsters also change zones at very specific HP thresholds about every 20%, which is terrible because that means monsters are moving around every minute or so with a relatively skillful player, and you spend more time chasing them down than actually hunting them sometimes because they kind of move a lot. And while you can stop limps temporarily with KOs, traps, and such, monsters just get up and immediately try to run off again. And it's kind of hard to stop them most of the time. So yeah, I don't know, it just kind of blows, and it's just something that I really don't like about the game. But honestly, that's really my only complaints about Wild Hearts right now. It's really just the performance and the monsters zoning so much. And I know a lot of the game will change with the day one update and even past that, because the devs said that they were going to continue to support the game, which is great because I really like the foundation here. And I think there's a whole lot of awesome ideas here, and if it's nurtured properly, I feel like Wild Hearts could be a great IP. It's a little rough around the edges right now, but that's just because I'm playing on like a day zero patch, and while it's pretty accurate to like the actual representation of the game, I feel like it could get better after launch, so I don't really want to just like review score it. So I'll let you make up your mind on whether or not the game looks appealing to you and at the $70 price tag, but that's gonna be it for me. So thank you all for watching, and thank you to my Patreon members. I really appreciate y'all a whole bunch. If anyone wants to talk shop about games or anything like that, feel free to join the Discord in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. So good luck out there, hunters.